In the last lesson, we learned that molecules have to go through the cell membrane through a variety of different processes like active transport and passive transport. Now we're going to learn how those cells use the molecules once they get into the cell. All cells have to capture and release energy. Let's review a few things first. Is it true or false that plant cells and animal cells have similarities and differences? That's true. Is it true or false that plant cells make their own food but animal cells do not? That's also true. And is it true or false that the chemical reaction is the basic unit of all living things? That is false. The correct answer there should be the cell. Let's review the different sources of energy. We have nuclear energy, thermal energy, electromagnetic energy, chemical energy, and mechanical energy. You're going to take a look at an animation here, and I want you to think about what types of energy you see being transferred or going from one form to another in that animation. I'm going to mouse over all the parts of the animation so you can see what's going on with the energy. And remember, for this animation, energy is measured in kilojoules, or kJ. So here we have a happy farm picture. We have the sun. The sun provides a lot of kilojoules of light energy per square meter. That sun's energy, if we follow the arrow gets transferred down into the plants of the area. And it says the grass converts about 25,000 kilojoules of energy into carbon compounds through a process called photosynthesis. But most of the sun's energy is not available for use by plants. If you take a look at the snail, it says that other herbivores compete with the cow and take in about 3,000 kilojoules of energy. And the worm is an organism that kind of works at the end of a food chain. It's what eats up biomass or things left over by other things. Alright, so we know that the sun's energy gets converted into something by the plants, and then you can see here that the cow is eating the plants. The cow takes in about 3,000 kilojoules of energy from the grass that it eats, and it transfers that or turns that into mechanical energy for movement. It also allows some energy when it turns the grass into waste, and then other organisms eat that waste. So you can see there's a lot of energy moving in our environment. Here's a more simplified view. If we take a look at this food chain, it starts with the sun. The sun is light or electromagnetic energy. That energy gets transferred to chemical energy in the plants that use the sun to make sugars, and then into the organisms that eat those plants, and then also those living organisms turn that chemical energy into mechanical energy for things like moving. All cells need energy. If you're following along in your book, we're taking a look here at page 47. Energy is stored in the bonds between atoms of molecules. A characteristic of this is that cells use chemical energy to function. For example, glucose is an energy molecule, and energy, or ATP, is an energy molecule. A non-example would be an atom all by itself. Now let's review some of the molecules you need to know for the two energy processes that we will be talking about. The first molecule is carbon dioxide. You can see it's made of 3 atoms, 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. And the other molecule is water. Water is also made of 3 atoms. And the last molecule is oxygen, which is only made of 2 atoms. So those are all very small molecules. Then we move on to some bigger molecules. we have an energy molecule, also known as ATP. The phosphates, these purple and red molecules, or atoms at the end here, that's where the energy comes from. And then glucose. Glucose is a form of sugar. It's what all of your food, all the basic sugars in your food get broken down into glucose. Okay, let's start talking about the first of our two processes that deal with energy in living organisms, and that first thing is called photosynthesis. Hopefully you are a little bit familiar with what photosynthesis is from other years in school. Photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplasts in plants and other autotrophs. Remember, an autotroph is something that makes its own food. This is what the chloroplasts look like in a section of leaf cells. So all of the little boxes here are individual cells, and the green dots you see in there are chloroplasts. Those chloroplasts contain chlorophyll, which is a green pigment. That's what makes plants look green. This is a close-up view of one chloroplast. So if we took one of these little green circles and used an electron microscope, this is what it would look like. You can see it's got lots of layers inside. The general formula for photosynthesis. This is a chemical reaction. So in a chemical reaction you have to have reactants. Those are the ingredients that go in, and products. Those are the things that come out. The reactants for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. And those three things turn into glucose and oxygen. So take a look here to see how photosynthesis works. In this animation you see carbon dioxide from the air goes into the leaf, water from the ground goes up into the leaves through the roots, and those turn into glucose, which stays in the leaf, and oxygen, which leaves the plant and goes out into the air. And then of course we breathe that oxygen. So I'll let you watch one more time. Carbon dioxide and water go into the chloroplasts in the leaf cells, and those turn into glucose and oxygen. Glucose gets used by the plant and oxygen leaves the plant. At this time I want you to pause this presentation and go watch the first photosynthesis video that's in your assignment box. Okay, now that you're back, let's move on. Some cells capture light energy. Capturing light energy is the process of photosynthesis. The plant, or the autotroph, sometimes it's a bacteria, takes in carbon dioxide and water from their environment. Those two molecules go into the chloroplast, and chlorophyll, which is that pigment chemical inside, captures light energy from the sun. And that light energy turns water and carbon dioxide into two different molecules, glucose and oxygen. The plant keeps the glucose and releases the oxygen into the atmosphere. The oxygen leaves the cells of goes out of the cells of the plant leaves and into the air for the rest of living organisms to breathe. So that's photosynthesis. Now let's take the opposite of that and look at cellular respiration. This is not how cells make sugar. This is instead how cells release energy from that sugar. All cells, no matter what kind of cell it is, has to release energy. Energy is stored. Remember, think back to the first few slides. What's another name for stored energy? It's called potential energy. Where do cells get their stored energy from? They get it from food molecules, chemical potential energy. Obviously, in order to get food, you either have to make it yourself, like a plant does, or you have to eat it, like animals do. What are two ways that all cells release stored energy? Those processes are called cellular respiration and fermentation. Cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria and plant and animal cells. This is what mitochondria look like. Take take a look at the red circles inside this heart cell. So the whole thing is one heart cell, and these red circles inside that heart muscle cell are mitochondria. You can see there's a lot of them in there. And you can kind of compare these to chloroplasts in a plant cell. In plant cells, remember, you also have mitochondria, so that plants do both photosynthesis and respiration, whereas animals only do cellular respiration. They do not do photosynthesis. This is a close-up view of a mitochondrion, which is the singular way to say that word. And you can see inside the mitochondrion, just like in the chloroplast, there are lots of layers. The general formula for cellular respiration is oxygen plus glucose, which is a simple form of sugar, gives us water and carbon dioxide and energy. Do you notice anything about this equation? You should. Let's take a look at an animation of this process. This is the big picture for cellular respiration. Everyday activities require energy.
Everyday activities require energy. Humans, like all living organisms, need to fuel their actions, similar to the way a car requires fuel to run. To fuel all this physical work, our bodies break down food molecules and extract their energy.
So you can see the character's eating an apple. His body is going to then break down those tiny pieces of apple into energy.
On this process, called cellular respiration, to run smoothly so that we'll have the energy needed to exert ourselves, or just relax. In cellular respiration, plants, animals, and all other living organisms harvest energy by breaking down energy-rich molecules.
You can see the bison is taking in sugar through the grass that it eats. It kind of its body breaks down the grass into sugar molecules.
In this example, a bison ingests grass, digests the food, and delivers food molecules to cells of its body. As energy is released by the reactions of cellular respiration, cells capture and store the energy in the bonds of ATP molecules, the chief energy currency of the cell.
So the bison takes the sugar, eats it, the mitochondria in its cells turn it into this molecule called ATP.
This plentiful, readily available stored energy in ATP can then be used as needed to fuel the activities of the organism. Cellular respiration requires oxygen, which the animal inhales, and releases carbon dioxide, which the animal exhales. Water is also released during these reactions.
So if we take a look at the whole reaction, it also says that the organism, if they are doing cellular respiration, has to breathe oxygen. That oxygen gets into your bloodstream and goes to your cells, and then the cells use the combination of the oxygen and the sugar to make carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The carbon dioxide you breathe out again. That's a waste product that your body doesn't use. So you breathe it out every time you breathe. Water, on the other hand, is used. You know, all of your cells need to be surrounded by water all the time. So if you have extra water, then you get rid of it, either through sweating or other processes. But for the most part, water in your body needs to stay in there.
Cellular respiration is a bit like photosynthesis in reverse.
Here you can see that respiration on the top is the opposite of photosynthesis on the bottom. What we put in for respiration, photosynthesis gives out. And what we get out of respiration, photosynthesis puts in. The only difference is the type of energy. They still have energy, but the type of energy for photosynthesis comes from sunlight, and the type of energy for respiration is a molecule called ATP.
Note that in photosynthesis, oxygen and sugar are products of the reaction, while they are inputs in cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, carbon dioxide and water are products of the reaction, while in photosynthesis, they are inputs. In photosynthesis, the transport chain.
And we're going to save learning about those steps for 10th grade. Alright, let's take another look at respiration. Here you see a cell. If we take a close-up look at the mitochondria, glucose and oxygen go into the mitochondria, carbon dioxide goes out of the mitochondria and out of the cell, while water stays in the cell. Take a look at that again. Oxygen and glucose go into the mitochondria. They get turned into carbon dioxide and water. Water stays in the cell, carbon dioxide leaves. Let's talk a little bit about cellular respiration, fermentation, energy, and exercise. We know for cellular respiration, glucose and oxygen enter the cell. That glucose splits into smaller molecules. Then those smaller molecules go into the mitochondria along with oxygen, and then the oxygen is used to break them down even more, to break more chemical bonds. When the molecules reform, energy is released and water and carbon dioxide are produced. Now, fermentation does the exact same thing, but they do it without the use of oxygen. There is no oxygen during fermentation. Sometimes you feel this when you are exercising and part of your muscles, or you get a stomach cramp, or one of your muscles starts to burn. That's because your body didn't have enough oxygen and it switched over to fermentation because your cells need to keep producing energy. If you use it too fast, you get that crampy feeling. But fermentation can also be a good thing because without fermentation we wouldn't have foods like bread, milk, or cheese. Let's compare the equations of photosynthesis and respiration one more time. Photosynthesis starts with water and carbon dioxide and light, and it releases, or the products are, oxygen and glucose. Respiration starts with oxygen and glucose, and it releases water and carbon dioxide and the molecule form of energy called ATP. These two equations are opposites of each other. We call that the loop. What I'd like you to do now is watch and pay attention to the second and third YouTube videos in order to answer the questions about the photosynthesis respiration loop in your assignment. And if you have any questions, please make sure you contact